Okay, good evening, everybody. Let us start our class this evening. And today is March 23rd, right? So we are in week 10. You see that we have completed 2/3 of this course, right? So we are almost at the last quarter of this course. And then, so according to our lecture schedule, so this week was assigned for module 6, exception and error handling. Okay, so in our last lecture I discussed exception and error handling. Okay, so in detail. So actually today we will discuss file IO operations, file input output operation. So I uploaded my last lecture video in D12 or in ETO. Okay, so one thing maybe I can go quickly to discuss, to review the key points for our last lecture. Okay, so last lecture that was exceptions, this one, module 6. Let us see how many okay, there's only one file for error exception and error handling. Okay, so as we discussed that, what is an exception? An exception is an unwanted error, and an unwanted error that is not unexpected error. So in our program, there are many situations that an error may happen. So mainly if an error is a syntax error, is mistake, typing mistake or something, we can know that the compiler can detect that during program compile time, okay, or execution time. So mostly in compile time, but there are some situations that an exception is not detected during program compile time and even in program execution time. It may happen for certain situation. For instance, if a number is divided by 0, for instance, in our operation, if there is an arithmetic operation like division operation, and at some point if either numerator or denominator becomes 0 or both become 0, then we get an unexpected or indeterminate form. In that case, an exception happens. So the common exceptions that usually happen, so that are handled using like built-in exception handling mechanism, and that are built in programming languages. But it may not happen that all kind of exceptions will be known by the program developers. Right? So we need to know our own way. We need to understand how to use exception handling mechanism and even how to create our own exception handling classes. For instance, if an exception happens, then sometime we need to give a customized message. The message may include the developer name or the app name or the company name and or with logo. So then that means in that case maybe instead of giving a general or common exception or error message, if you can give a customized exception that will have either a developing company's name on it, then maybe user will be more satisfied. Okay, that is the goal. So as we discussed that there are two ways to handle an exception. That one way is to try and catch using try catch block. Using a try block, that means there's some potentially problematic codes. The codes that may generate an exception, we put that in try block. Okay, and if that exception happen, then we use some way to to collect the exception, to catch the exception, or to bypass or do something differently, or give an error message or something that we do in catch block. And so try catch block is always followed by try block, and there is another keyword that is finally that is used with try catch block. So no matter if an exception happens or does not happen, the code in the finally block always executed. Especially, for instance, for some operation, whenever you open a data file, then at the end of your program, you should close your data file. Okay. Sometime you know that, for instance, everybody is familiar with we are using Teams app, right? So when you join in online in your Teams app, sometime if you are, for instance, host, sometime what you can do, you can, when you will leave the program, you can close or terminate the program, right? Whenever, so for instance, if I am host for this program, for this lecture, 2 days, whenever I leave, I can do two things. For instance, I can leave or I can end meeting, right? So if I end meeting, then everybody will be closed by default, right? So everyone's call will be closed. But if I want to leave only myself, but I want to keep the session 1 going on, right? Then in that case, I can leave only. So there are at least two common situations we have here. So in that case, for instance, if I open a database, for instance, and let us think that we are using a common database. We are accessing a database and we are editing a database in a SharePoint. We put a SharePoint. And if I open database in my program, and if I just leave the program, I do not close the database file, right? So then in other place, other users, if someone else, you or someone else need to work on that file, same file that I was working on. So unless I close the data file, you may not be able to open it or edit it, right? So in that case, that we need to make sure that as soon as either I leave the program or I close the program, end the program, my database file will be closed. So that kind of statements are put usually in finally block. So the statements in the finally block always executed. Okay, no matter an exception happens or does not happen. Okay, so but you cannot have a finally block without a try catch block. So then the question is that how about if we do not use finally block, just write our code that for closing file code here, right? If we write our code the last here, closing our file code, we do not use any finally block. So as we discussed this in our last lecture, and so far we discussed, anyone has an idea what are the advantages or disadvantages of not using finally block? Instead of, we can write our code here, just we did not use any finally block, but we use the files code that we want to use for closing our database. What are the advantages or disadvantages? Anyone has any idea? Do you understand my question? So earlier we discussed that there is a finally block. If we do not use finally block, but just write the code here, that would go in finally block, what would happen? It may still running, because if an exception happens, okay, and if that exception is not caught, or even it is caught, okay, your program may terminate from your side. Only you may leave from the program, but it may be still continuing. Okay, but finally block ensures that even an exception happens, what does not happen, this code will be executed. Okay, so this is one way to handle exceptions using try-catch blocks. There is another way to handle exception, is that today we will see that we use throws keyword. We use throws keyword to throw the exceptions, okay, that all the exceptions that the method that may generate the exception. So we use that on the header line of this method that may create an exception. So since we will discuss file operation program today, and then we will get some real example how do we use throws keyword, and then we understand that there is throws keyword, throws exception. This exception is a built-in class, and then it throws, so that means it, and this is throw new exception, and then this is an exception class. Actually it is sending this message to the exception constructor. Okay, and it is throws exception, it is throws keyword is used only header line, and it is here throw new exception. The difference, understand the difference between throws and throw keyword. In our last lecture I discussed this. We took more time to discuss this. Okay, please review this code, and there will be a possible test question from this. For instance, if you are given some code like this, you will be asked what will be the output of this code. Okay. Okay, and then in our last lecture we discussed how to create our own exceptions. Okay, in addition to the existing exception classes, we can create our own exceptions, and whenever we create our own exceptions, we must inherit the exception class. So in Java we use the extend keyword, and in C# we use colon keyword, and we will see how do we create our own exception. For instance here, so this is my exception class, and then this is a constructor, and this is another constructor. Okay, so through this constructor we are passing a message, and this message is sent to the exception class, to its constructor, using super keyword, super method, right? You understand super? Super method is used to invoke its parent constructor. And in Java, in C++, C# we use base keyword instead of super keyword. Okay. So we use base keyword. You see that how base is used with colon sign, and I will discuss a program that I will show you a program. Okay. In our last lecture, I discussed a program in Java, and then I converted that program in C#. If you are able to open that, that is fine. Otherwise, I will open it for you, and then I will discuss it. Okay, this is a common interview question. What is an exception? And what are the types of exceptions? There are two basic types of exceptions. One is unchecked exceptions, and that another is called checked exceptions. The checked exceptions are exceptions that are checked at compile time. Okay, and unchecked exception. So this exception, since this exception are checked at exception and compile time, so we must handle this exception in our program. Otherwise, since it is checked during compile time, so unless you handle this using try-catch or throws keyword, so your program will give an error. This will, since these are checked as compile time, so compiler will give an error. Okay, so checked exception are inherited from actually exception class. So as we discussed, I'm going back soon, maybe okay here. So we have this class hierarchy in Java. So this is object class, throwable class, and exception class. So these are the subclasses of these, okay, are checked exceptions. Okay. So there are other exceptions that are mainly from inherited from error class or runtime exception. So this is a runtime exception. This is a subclass of exception class. So these are called unchecked exceptions. Unchecked exceptions are not caught or checked by the compiler during compile time. So even that means if you have some unchecked exceptions, program will not detect that during your program time. For instance, divide by 0. If you have your program division method, to use a division method, so program doesn't know that. So apparently there is no error in your program. Your program compiler does not know whether there will be a situation that the denominator will get 0. Right? So what about that? Whenever you run your program, if you give input for numerator and denominator, right? So the program doesn't know whether you will give 0 for the denominator or the program will get a 0. It doesn't know. So the program compiler cannot catch this as an error or exception. So what is this? This one is called unchecked exception. Okay, but similarly, like if it goes, so like this one, so if it goes out of index of an array, okay, so unless you go to the last index of an array, okay, compiler does not know whether you will hit the last index or you will go out of the index. Until the last index point, it will be fine, right? So these kind of exceptions are called unchecked exceptions. Compiler cannot detect this exception. Okay. So in our program, there are some situations that compiler knows that there may be an exception happen. For instance, in Java program, if you want to use keyboard, system.in.read, this is a keyboard command, right, to enter data. So that compiler, in this case, is know that you will be using your keyboard. So a compiler assumes that it may happen that your keyboard is detached from your computer program, right? If you are not using if you are using external keyboard may be detached, right? Or if you want to read from a database, data file may not be available. Okay. If you want to use a data file, that data file is being used by another program. Okay, it may cause a dead loss situation. So in that case, compiler will know this ahead of time. So it will give an error message in compile time. So as we know that whenever we write a program in Eclipse, so it is being compiled as soon as we type in. Right? So as soon as we type in, even if we hit run button, it will give an error. This red line shows that it is giving a compile time error. Okay, that means it is checked exception. So what do we need to do? We need to put this line of code in either try-catch block you need to use. Okay, so personally I like checked exceptions. So whenever you get checked exception, right, you know that there is an exception, right? You need to handle it. But if it's an unchecked exception, you may not realize that. then an exception will happen, right? So what do we resolve this problem? For instance, we can, another situation is that it may this is an exception. It is okay. So by looking this, everybody please look at my screen. Okay. So by looking this screen and this screen, this slide and these two slides. Okay. So I'm asking you to find out which one is checked exception and which one is unchecked exception. Is this a checked exception? And how about this one? Is this an unchecked or checked exception here? So exception is getting over here. See that? And I'm asking whether this is a checked exception or an unchecked exception. And this one, whether it is a checked exception or an unchecked exception. Tell me.
This is a checked.
Okay, how do I know that this is a checked exception?
The compiler is telling you at the red line.
Yeah, thank you. So then, how about this one?
I'm curious. It probably might know that it's going to equal 0, but I'm thinking it only knows that when it actually is ran.
Yeah, it is an unchecked exception. During program compilation, it will not give you an error. So as we know that whenever we type in Eclipse, it suddenly instantly compile code. So there is no error here in program. There is no compile time error. No compile time exception, okay? It is an unchecked exception. So all exceptions, checked exception are checked. Okay, okay. Check means determined during program compilation. Actually, there are two phases of program execution. One is program compiling, another is running. You understand? So whenever we compile a program, okay, this is the compilation phase, and then whenever you run it, so this is coming in running time. Okay, maybe I will show you whenever if we use our Eclipse or IDE, some IDE that do not give us the idea what is the part of compilation and which part is execution running. So we can compile separately. Okay, I will show you in some examples, but let me finish this one first. Okay, so please read this and understand that about checked and unchecked exceptions. Okay, and if you read more, want to read more, but there are examples over here. Okay, but you need to understand the basic concept of checked and unchecked exception. Okay, has anyone any question about checked and unchecked exception? Anyone has any question about checked and unchecked exceptions? You understand? You understand? Okay, people who are joining online, do you understand what is checked exception and what is unchecked exceptions and their difference?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay, this is either it could be a test question and definitely it could be an interview question. Okay.
So basically the difference between checked and unchecked is that unchecked, it basically says, hey, this was an error, but we're just going to keep going.
No, it is not telling this. This is not an error. So unchecked exception are caught only program running time.
Okay, got it.
So this program, so while it's running, it is getting D for D, it is getting denominator is 0. Okay. I could have different XY value, right? So X and Y value. If I have a different XY value, that may not yield denominator is equal to 0. Right? For instance, if I take X and Y value using keyboard, another value, right? Or random value generate, that may not make this situation. So then exception will not happen, it's fine. Right? But and then like array out of index exception. unless you go out all the way in to an array index pointer, and then if you want to exceed that, then it's fine. If you exceed that, then that will make an error. This is a common interview question, okay? And sometimes, for instance, if I have a variable like this, I have a value, integer type value, and this is the last, maybe the highest value, for instance, for an integer type. Okay, if I want to add some more value over here, right? So that will be overflowing. It will exceed the range of integer type. So then your printer will be printing something else like this or anything, something else. So it will overflow, right? So it will print a garbage value. Your result may not be exactly something like this, or it will not be like this with 57. It will be a wrong value or garbage value. So like this kind of exception is an exception, right? We may not realize that our program will happen that it will exceed our range of data type, right? So in that case, an exception may happen. So what do we need to do? There are many other situations that we may not be aware of ahead of time. So, and then in our program, we must handle exceptions. Especially if your program is used for accessing database or any table or any file or connecting with another computer. Okay, so then you must use exception handling mechanism. Okay, so in our last lecture, I discussed our code says here, so how to design your own exception in C++ and Java and C++. In our last lecture, I discussed this. Okay, I want to share this quickly with you. Okay, custom exception, example on Java, and this one is C#. Okay, so the left side, this program is written in Java. You see that main.java. So let me explain that. So we have I'm creating my own exception class. So in class name is my exception, extend exception, and this is constructor, my exception constructor, and it is taking a string as an argument, and it is calling super method to pass this string to what? To exception class, this parent class. Okay, and this is the message, my message. Okay, this return type is strings. All of these this is the start of my exception class, and this is the end of my exception class. Okay, so and in my main method, you see that in my main method I am calling, and that's good. I want to put all together in one slide so that you can see from your side. Okay, that's it. Okay. Okay, even if you do not see the last part, you should see the main part. Okay, and this program is in right side is in C#. Okay, so the programs are identical. trying to make some space. Okay, calling is same. Okay, so I like you to spend some time and to compare the difference between C++ and C# program. Sorry, C#, the right side is C# and left side is Java. Okay, I'm trying to. Okay. I'm trying to get some code so that you see that these are identical. Okay, so you see that spend a few minutes, okay, to understand the difference between left side is Java and right side is C# code. Okay. Okay, I will ask someone to explain the differences between Java and C# implementation of user-defined exception. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm taking 3 minutes break, and then by this time, please look at the code, okay, and try to understand the difference between these codes. Okay. Okay, please tell me the differences. because these differences are tiny, okay, but even sometimes I forget that, okay, so don't try to memorize this. You don't need to memorize it. What you need to understand this concept, and you can keep it in your profile, and whenever you do programming, if you just remember this, okay, please. Okay. So please save this in your profile, in your account, okay, and then it will help you in future, okay. So even if you do not understand now today, you will understand at some point. Even if you do not need it today, you will need it at some time, okay. So on the right side, on the left side, on the right side I have C# program, and on the left side I have Java program. So our goal is to create my own exception class. I named it my exception, and then it inherits the exception class. So in C# it is simple, right? We use colons keyword, and in Java we use extends keyword. Okay, and then this is the constructor. Okay, so the constructor on the left side, we understand this is a constructor. Okay, my exception, and it is taking a string, and then this string is being passed using super method to the exception class. Super method is used to invoke is parent class constructor. It cannot call is grandparent constructor, only one level up it can go. So in Java we use super keyword, but in C# we use base. So you see that how these are different. So here we use this column, again inheritance, and then base and string. You may try with different version or different code, it may not work. Okay, and so whatever we do, so we say base dot message. This message is an attribute, built-in attribute, okay, in the exception class. So we are passing this message. What message? Whatever message I will put in my constructor. That message is being passed to the exception class. And here you see that public string my message is taking the message and say return the exception is whatever exception it happens, it gets. And that is C# and like JavaScript and other web-based languages, that is called string interpolation technique. That is used string interpolation. So it can use either this way or this way, both will work. So either it will work string interpolation or this way it will work. Okay, but Java does not have string. I'm not sure that it will work. I'm not sure. But Java it is simple, right? And C# this type simple. And in my main method, so in my main method, so here in our main method, so what we are doing, so we are saying if g is less than 0.001, so we are saying throw new exception, and here we are giving the message the result is too small, and same thing over here. You see the same or identical codes are used. 100 to extend this. Okay, I wanted to extend this one. It's not working. So over here, that you see that our codes are almost identical. Our codes are almost identical. Okay. So then let us run this program. So if we run this program, for here g value will be very small, 0.00001. Okay, e power -5. That means the decimal will go 5 digits left. Right? So that means there will be 0000, 4 zeros before 1, and with decimal point 0.00001. Okay, so here is this caught exception. So it says that caught user defined exception. So this line will be executed here, and then it is giving throws in this exception. This method is being passed to the exception class, and then what is my exception class is doing? It is showing the exception is after this whatever message is given. So the exception is whatever message is given, the message is given, the result is too small. So it is giving, so this part is my built-in part, default part. After this it is giving the result is too small, and then the program terminated successfully. This was given in the finally block. So in the finally block. So everybody should understand what is going in the finally block. But here, if an exception is being happened, and then it is caught over here in the catch block, you see that how this exception is handled using my own exception. So what is that class? Usually in our previous programs, we used normal exception class, right? Here, but I am using my exception class. So what is my exception class over here? That is being declared over here. It can be put in another file, or it can have another program or package. Okay, as long as that have access, it will get it. Okay, and similarly, in our C# code, let's run this. We got same identical code over here. Okay, something. Has anyone any question?
Nope.
Okay. So this part, actually this lecture is really sophisticated. Okay, you need to do some practice and to think about some time. Better, for instance, if you do side by side in C# and Java, then you can understand how this works. Okay, this is a complete program. Even many books, they do not have complete program like this. Our slides do not have complete program. This is my own program. Okay, I shared my code with you. Okay, if you don't have any question about exception handling, then I want to go forward to our next module. Has anyone any question? Yes. Here. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I discussed this. This is the format in C#. So every programming languages handle this in this differently. So we use this one in C#. checked. Let us run this in C#. Checked method. So how about if we do not use this one? I think that is optional. Even I do not use this one, it will get that exception. Okay, that's good. The difference is that it is giving just an unexpected result, right? See that this result, is this the correct result? Okay, so let us make sure that if we multiply, you will understand that. Okay, so a large number, for instance 100,000. So definitely it will pass the range of integer value, right? So in that case, your program will give you it will not give you any exception method, but it will give you an unexpected result, unwanted result, right? Okay, then what you want to do, so in their situation, what may happen if you do not give an error message or warning message, then you may overlook this, right? Okay, in that situation, the programming languages have like this. If we use this one, so then it will happen. So then definitely it will give you the warning or error message. So it is saying that warning, or you see that error message or warning message is giving you. So unhandled exceptions. So arithmetic operation result. Okay, so let us try this in Java, how it works in Java. Okay, thank you so much for bringing it in my attention. I almost forgot to discuss this again. So I'm sharing this video. Oh, I need to forget. So I need this one. I don't think Java does have checked. Okay. So if we let us see what it gives us. I'm not sure. Okay. So let us skip this one and let us keep this format with an exception. Okay, it's giving, see that an error. So actually this mechanism is that how to make unchecked exception to checked exception. Converting checked exception, unchecked exception. That was unchecked, right? And it is whenever you use this, that is making unchecked exception to checked exception. Okay, so I need to look at Java, how to convert unchecked exception to checked. Java convert set exception to checked exception. Let us see. Okay, it does not have a detail. Okay. Okay, so they use an technology to throw an exception. Okay. Let me see if that works. This technology works. Throw new exceptions. I'm not sure that I can keep it here. I need to have a look. Okay, so I will look how that works. How to convert this in Java. If you can fix it, then let me know. Okay. Okay, but it works in C#. Okay. Has anyone any question? Okay, there is a research result. There is a good positive correlation between your programming experience and your skill in handling exception and error. If you can handle exception and error nicely, then it is assumed that you are a good programmer, and vice versa. If you are a good programmer, then you can handle exceptions. You understand? So if you are a good programmer, then you will be good in handling error and exceptions, because you know the code, and this is the sophisticated. So as you notice that this is the most like critical content, right? Whatever we discussed so far, especially except user-defined error handling. So if you want in a team that, or in a project that needs to handle exception, definitely you need. So then please try to understand this, and you will get some test question from here. Okay, so now let us go to our next module. So that our next content is module 7 is IO, file and file out, input output operation. So our goal, we have 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes here tonight, and then I will go through a few slides, and then in our next lecture I hope I will complete this. Okay. So file input output operation. This is most important. Another important thing for an application, complete application. So for all programs need to work with some kind of data. And for modern programs, for most of the programs, we use database, and sometimes most of the time we use database that are stored in remote place, right? We connect to the database and we grab data. Yeah. So all web-based application uses some database in the back end. So in the front end, we see only user interface, but in the back end, we have a strong program that connect with database. And that needs to file IO operation, taking input from file and sending output or result or modified data to our data file. That is called output operation. Okay. So it is the concept like more likely as reading something from console or using keyboard, right? So we are familiar with how to read data from keyboard. Okay, how to write data, display data on console. So one thing is that if you are not familiar with this, you cannot recall. So I'd like you to go the key difference between C#, C++, and Java. So we are focusing on C++ and C# and Java here, right? So open this slide, please, and get it, save it. Okay, I developed this. So here you see that most of the languages have 80% coding syntax are same or identical. Okay, so the main differences come within few points, like structure of the main method, output statement, input statement, in some keywords, constant declaration, Swiss keyword, Swiss case statement, and some others. Okay, so the first thing is that we know that what is the difference in structure Java program, C# program between, right? And then another is output statement different. In Java we use system.out.println, and C# we use console.writeLine. Right? So the another difference is that input operation. For input operation, we use scanner class, and then we use some built-in methods that are developed in scanner class by creating a scanner object. We call this method. And same thing in C#, we use system package, and system package has this read line method, and we use some other methods to convert. So actually read line or next line, whatever you say, they usually get string type value, and we convert that string to integer or float or whatever you need. So this is the concept that, for instance, input operation and output operations. Okay, so in our data file operations, so we need input. So here in console program, we are taking input using keyboard. In file operation, we will take input from data file. And here in console program, we are sending our output to our monitor, right, in console. But in file IO operation program, we will send our data to a data file. Right? So the mechanisms are identical, but they are a little bit is difficult. Okay. So in order to do this, there are some built-in classes. So in Java and C#. So like in Java we use system.in, and in C# we use console. These are the built-in class. And then for file operations, file management, there is a file class, built-in file class. Okay. And for output, we use system.output, and in Java, C# we use console. Okay, and for network operation, we use socket class. There is a socket class. We are not discussing network over here. So just remember that system.in and then system.out, console, and files. Files is used for file management, okay, not actually file IO operation. We'll come that soon, okay. But another thing is that before we process a file, we need to understand in which mode we are opening files. Sometimes we open a file in read-only mode. We can only read the content. We cannot change it. We cannot edit it. Right? Or sometimes if we open a file only in read mode, we will only read. We cannot write. Or sometimes we open it write mode. Or sometimes we open it edit mode. Append mode. Sometimes there are some existing data, and then we will add our new data or edit that one. Okay, so there are actually at least three different situations in file opening, three different modes: read mode, write mode, and append mode. So write mode, it may happen that if you want to write a file, there is an existing file, that file will be overwritten. The existing previous data will be gone, and it will create a new file, brand new file with the same name. But if you want that our previous data will be as is, and I want to add some new data or some change, right? Okay, so then we say that append mode. And create is used to just create a new file. Okay. And in order to do an operation, at the end of operation, we need to close the file. So you will hear the code input stream or output stream or file stream. That is a flow. Stream is a flow, that means a connection. Okay. So whenever we do input stream use, that means we make a flow between our keyboard and program. And for output flow, we make a connection between our program to our monitor or display key. And then for file stream, then there is a stream or flow between the data file and in your IO device. So that whenever you give input, your data goes from keyboard to data file. And whenever you take output, your data comes from data file to your display device. Okay. So whenever we do file operation, file reading, there are different kinds of different structure of file operation. First, let us consider reading. Okay, you can read one character at a time, one character by one character. You can read one word at a time, word by word. You can read per line, one line together at a time. Okay, you can use multiple elements or like a paragraph together at a time, or you can grab the entire file together at a time. Okay, so there are different styles or structures of reading. Okay. So one of the code is called delimiter, such as space or comma or new line. So if you want to grab word by word, so what is the separator between two words? Space, right? Or a comma, right? Or maybe semicolon, right? Or maybe new line. And what is the difference between two lines? Separator between two lines, new line. When you press enter, it creates a new line, right? So there we can set up which delimiter we will use. Okay. In our program, we will see that we need to use this one. So I'm highlighting this one so that you remember that we set up in our. Okay. And another concept is that is binary file. Okay, so we will discuss this in our Intel example, binary file. Okay, so I'm not going this one today, but let us Okay, we have a few more minutes, so let us see. Okay. So in what is happening, actually data are read and write through layers. So there are multiple layers. Okay. So multiple layers, that is one layers are connected with another layers. Like this is an elevator. Whenever there is an elevator, right? If you go to from first floor to 10th floor, you pass first floor, then go to second floor, third floor, fifth floor, right? Fourth floor, fifth floor, right? You go to the top floor, whatever floor you want. You can, there is no way that you jump from one floor to another floor. You may not stop at one floor, right? Or like you can more apparently we can give an example like a stairway. Whenever you get off, you have to go up step by step, right? And go down, you have to come step by step. So in file operation, we have their layers. So like each steps, they are connected with each other. Okay. So this is an example of this is a Java program we used. So file operation, that you will create a file, and then you see that whenever your program you are going to use a file operation, the compiler knows that there may a situation may happen that the file does not exist. File maybe exist, but it may be used by another program. So in that case, for any kind of file operation, you must handle exceptions. So the codes that will create or open the file must be put in try block. Are put in the try block. Okay, so this is why we discussed file operation exception handling earlier, right? So now you know that how do we handle exceptions. So the code, these are the code, potential code that may create error. So we put this in try block, and in the catch block, if an exception happens over here, we are putting that exception, and then we can have another finally block to close this. Okay, but see the structure that there are two ways. Either you can use try blocks, try catch block, or you can use throws exception over here. Throws exception over here. Okay, throws mainly for this exception is called IO exceptions. You see that how IO are written. IO are all uppercase. Okay, so this is a Java program, and then this is C# program. So let me see how many examples are there. I have few examples over here. Okay, don't worry, I will discuss this in our next lecture. Okay, I need a full lecture and some cool mind to understand this. Okay, that today just we got some idea about file and operation. Okay, and then in our next lecture we'll discuss this. So has anyone any question? Okay, there are a few announcements. So you see that we have our resources available, many resources available in our first year experience page. Okay, so please go through these resources, and in addition to these resources, there are many tons of application and example online, whatever you like. Okay, make sure that you have all available, and then let us go through our D2L, or I can see schedule. Okay, So test 2 is coming, right? So at the beginning of, at the end of first week, we will have our test 2. So for my section, test 2 will be on April 6th. Okay. So April 6th will be our test 2. Okay. So in test 2, we will cover from module 1 to 6. So 6 module is for exception handling. Okay, so please be ready for the upcoming test 2. And this weekend there is quiz 6, right? Okay, please do not forget quiz 6. Quiz 6 is mainly about recursion, so I think at this point it should be good to take it. Okay, that's all for tonight. Has anyone any question? People who are joining online, has anyone any question?